I'm Martha and I work for the support team at Bliss. And part of the content that we're sharing for Full Term Awareness Month in February, we are going to have a chat with the wonderful Deanne Williams, who is a play specialist at Great Ormand Street Hospital and works with families on the neonatal unit there. We're going to talk about play and the benefits of play and how you might integrate that into your baby's care plan. Just before we start the conversation, I just wanted to remind all the families watching that if you need any support or information about your neonatal journey, Bliss is here for you. We have tons and tons of information on our website about every stage of your neonatal journey, whether that's when you're pregnant, if you know that your baby's going to go into neonatal care, all the way through while you're in hospital and after you get discharged home. You may need some emotional support. We've got email that you can get hold of the support team by emailing hello@bliss.org.uk. We can share lots of other options for support there as well. Yeah, just get in touch if you need us. The other thing just to mention before we begin is that it's really, really important that before engaging in any play with your baby in the neonatal unit, to have a talk with the staff that are caring for your baby as well, just to make sure that your baby's ready for the type of play that you want to introduce. And then, as always, if you find anything in the conversation upsetting, or you have any questions, or something reminds you of the experience that you've had, do get in touch with the support team, as I mentioned before, by emailing hello@bliss.org.uk. So thank you for listening to that. Yeah, Deanne, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have this chat with you. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your role on the neonatal unit and how you work with families?
Hello, Martha. Thank you for having me today. My role on the neonatal unit involves to offer play to support all babies and their families. This may be to offer emotional support, but also to use play as a tool to aid babies' development.
Fab. That's brilliant. And I know when we first started talking, it can feel strange as well to sort of like imagine for families integrating play when their baby's in hospital. Can you kind of explain what you mean by play and maybe give a couple of examples just for anyone watching?
Yes, I often get asked about my role quite often because people don't fully understand what it means for babies to play. Some parents are quite understanding about it. I have had a dad say to me once, "I'd love to see what you do with a 3-day-old." So it's nice when people laugh about it or ask a lot of questions. But what I mean by play is a few different things. So it's not to overwhelm them, but just some sort of light stimulation. So as much as babies are asleep for the majority of their day, there is a part of the day where they do need some stimulation. And so some of the things that I mean by playing, for example, is sound. So I often say to parents, it is good to read to their babies because it's good for babies to get used to their parents' voices and also other carers or loved ones within the families. So some of the things I suggest, one of the books I love is Guess How Much I Love You. It is a really nice book, and I always offer it to the parents on the unit. And sometimes it might not even be a story due to newborn sight. The first few weeks they see in black and white. So some of these books are what I recommend. This one has quite a light story, and it just takes the baby and their parents on a bit of a journey, which is quite nice. So sometimes you can also introduce colour. I always say not too bright, but sometimes helping them to explore different textures. So you've got a bit of a softball here that's also got a bit of a bell inside. So just something that won't overwhelm them and also overstimulate their ears, just a bit of light engagement, really.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. What do you find when you're working with families, and from your experience, what do you find that the benefits of playing that parents can have with their babies, like while they're in hospital? So sort of, I guess, both for the babies, benefits for the babies and the benefits for the parents as well.
For the babies, it definitely aids their development. Because sometimes depending on when they've been born, so if they're premature, then it is likely to affect their development, and it probably might be a bit delayed. So sometimes play helps to kind of close that gap and helps them to kind of work their way towards meeting their developmental milestones. For parents, I would say it helps a lot with bonding. Because some parents, especially when they're first brought to the neonatal intensive care unit, they kind of see all the machinery, the incubator, the wires, and they become quite worried and concerned about where they fit in this part of their baby's journey. So sometimes the bonding it kind of falls to the wayside. So where I kind of help with that is to just kind of get the parents to do kind of kangaroo care, skin to skin, because it might be in the early stages you can't play, and that is something I'm always very mindful of. But I think just helping them to bond, even if they can't pick them up at the moment, maybe just putting their hand in just to kind of hold their baby's hand as such, just so there is some sort of positive touch there, and just to kind of help babies and parents to form a connection with each other.
Yeah, and I think we often hear from parents that it's really, really tough when you're on the neonatal unit, because you can see all the wires and the sounds, and it's such a strange place to be. And then to kind of it's really hard to feel like a parent. This isn't the journey that you might have imagined. And these things, and especially with lots of work we've done recently as well, finding how parents can be involved and how important just even putting their hands in and comfort holding babies can actually be for pain management and the bonding process. As you said, it's just such it may not feel like a huge thing to think about, but actually that's a really, really big thing that parents can do to be part of their baby's care. And yeah, talking about play, and I know we've mentioned that every baby develops at a different pace, and there might be certain things that might affect their development being in neonatal care, or might not affect their development. But is play appropriate for all babies on the neonatal unit, and sort of how can it be adapted if it's not? I know you've talked about different sort of things that you can do, but yeah, is it appropriate for all babies on the neonatal unit?
All babies, I believe, should be given the space to access play, and it is vital for their development. But as you said, sometimes it might not always be suitable. As I am only trained in play and not clinically trained, I take my lead from the clinical staff on the ward. It's important that babies are assessed by staff on the unit, and observations are key to this first stage, because if we don't observe them, we don't know what they're able to do or to not do, and what they are able to tolerate and what they aren't able to tolerate. So together with parents and carers and colleagues, we make an assessment about what is needed, but also, most importantly, what is appropriate.
Okay.
So we don't really want to overwhelm or overstimulate the babies if they're not developmentally ready. So it comes back to what me and you have spoken about before. All babies are different and develop at their own paces. And I always say to parents, this is one of the first things I do say before I offer any type of play. I always say to them, it's important to keep that in mind, because sometimes I think when you're on the neonatal unit, you start to look around naturally, as we would all do, and start to compare other babies to your own. And sometimes I say to parents, whilst I understand because most of your day is spent on the unit, it is important not to compare, because where each baby is different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's really good to keep that in mind, I think. And like you say, you know, kind of working as a team with the staff on the unit, just to make sure that it's right, it's exactly what your baby needs at the right time. Thank you. And then sort of my last question really is, so not all neonatal units will have someone in the role that you're in as a play specialist. So who can families talk to if you know, they've watched this and they want to understand a little bit more about play and how to sort of interact with their babies through play on the neonatal unit? Who might they talk to on like, which staff might they talk to on the unit about this?
Yes, so here at Gosh, we are incredibly lucky because the play team is fully funded by the charity and not the NHS. But I am very aware that some hospitals don't have access to this service. So usually there are a variety of other members of staff that you can speak to. So some hospitals may have what is called a family liaison team. Some have family support workers. Physios are also another good professional role, should I say, to go to and seek advice from, especially with regard to movement and how to develop their baby's movement, whether it's their gross motor skills or working on their fine motor skills. Physio and occupational therapists are always, I think, the best people to go to for that. I would say in terms of, especially for bonding, neonatal support workers and nursery nurses who are based on the units are also some of the best people to seek advice from. On discharge, colleagues can reach out to Bliss because it is good to make these referrals sometimes ahead of time before the families get home. Sometimes I've found in my own experience, if these referrals are not done, whether it's to Bliss or whether it's to GPs or health visitors in the community, if the referrals are not done before the families leave the unit and for whatever reason they go home and struggle, it is then harder to get them the support that they need.
Yeah.
So to safeguard our babies and their parents, if we feel that they might just need a bit extra support when they go home, even if it's just to settle in, then we will make these referrals ahead of time and hopefully get them the support in the community that they need.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, we hear a lot from families when they come home from the unit, you know, with you know, questions about kind of settling in at home, and you know, even from sometimes babies might take a little bit of time to settle in at home because it's completely different atmosphere, completely different smells and sounds and noises. Yeah, thank you for mentioning referrals to Bliss, and you know, just to make clear what we can offer parents when they get home is, and actually while they're on the unit as well, we have amazing Bliss champion volunteers who we train to offer emotional support and practical information. It can really just help bridge that gap between being on the unit and having the support of all the staff around you and getting home, and how you might feel when your baby's at home. We're not clinically trained, just to mention that, but might be able to sort of guide you with who you can talk to locally in your community. For example, like health visitors, yeah, who might be able to help support as well. So thank you for that. It's really good. I think it can be sometimes a little bit daunting when you're in the unit and you don't quite know which staff member to talk to about which thing. So that's really helpful. That's amazing. Thank you. We had a couple of queries in from some parents actually, which would be great if we can talk through a couple of those as well. So one of the questions was, what age can you get involved with play? What age of your, of the baby can you get involved and start playing with them?
Before some parents joke about it, but I always say there's no right age, but there's also no wrong age. It's just, again, working out what is appropriate. So, for example, if you've got a 10-day-old or a baby that is under 10 days old, then I wouldn't advise, all singing and all dancing or anything that would overwhelm them. But sometimes I say, to parents, again, where they're sleeping a lot of the time, if they wake up and you notice they might be awake for a prolonged period of time, then some of the things that you can stick in the incubators, or the nurses allow me to stick in, are like just some plain black and white images.
Okay.
And any nursing staff would be happy to offer parents some tape and just to stick them in there. There is such thing as overstimulation, so I always say to just be mindful to kind of give them that time to explore the image, but then also take it away. Looking at it for too long is not always recommended.
Okay. And then and I guess it's sort of like we're saying, it depends on the baby, and you can kind of talk to staff in the unit before sort of adding anything to their cot or anything like that.
Yeah.
Fab. Thank you. And then someone else has asked sort of how might other family members get involved in play and bonding, and I'm sort of thinking particularly siblings, actually, like how would you kind of it's so tough when children are at home and they know of this baby that's been born and they're in the neonatal unit and their parents might not be around when they're there, and it's just we hear from parents so much that it's so hard to kind of split their time between two children and help their child at home understand what's going on in the hospital. Do you have any kind of information that you can share about that as well?
Yes, so another key element of being a health play specialist is offering support to siblings. So sometimes on the neonatal unit, that is one of the things I'm asked to do. One of the ways I prepare siblings or encourage parents to is by using what I like to call preparation books. So there are many books that you can find that have been written to explain exactly what is going on with the baby, not the diagnosis as such, but just in a child-friendly and age-appropriate way, explaining why their sibling hasn't come home yet from the hospital.
Yeah.
I think these are a great way to help siblings and to guide their understanding throughout the whole process, because some babies, as we know, have short admissions, some babies have longer admissions, and you just sometimes don't know how long the admissions will last for. And at each stage of the admission, it is likely that the siblings will have questions. So with the preparation books, I always say to parents, they're a great way of preparing the sibling for what they might see if the parents want them to come into the neonatal unit to visit their sibling. And you can keep reading that book sometimes over a few nights at home, because sometimes, you go through a book the first time and they might not always grasp the understanding or of the content. But as you read it again, they start to understand and link it to their own experience of, oh, that's why my baby brother or sister is in hospital. You find as well, once they come and they're actually brought into the hospital, not everything is unfamiliar. They're like, oh, I saw this in the book, and so they are more likely to understand, especially if that prep work has been done at home. Another way I encourage parents to also include siblings is by swapping teddies. So I always say to parents, buy 2 teddies exactly the same.
Yeah.
One, the baby will have with them on the neonatal unit, so it will be in the incubator with them, or the cot, and then give the other teddy to the sibling and let them have that with them at home. They can keep it in their bed or sleep with it. And then when it's time to finally introduce both children to each other, you can then say, oh, you say to the sibling, give your brother or sister the present that you got for them, and they will hand theirs over. And then the parents can then say, oh, your baby or brother's got you a present, and you give them the other teddy.
Such a lovely idea. I love that.
Yeah, and then that way they get used to the scent of each other before
Yeah,
discharge.
yeah. Amazing. Thank you. I love that. That's really lovely. One of the things that you probably hear this as well, but when during the pandemic we had you know, it was for various reasons, you know, parents might not have been able to be with their babies as much as they wanted to be, and some units actually got parents to record themselves reading a bedtime story, and then they could play it to the babies in their incubators, which was a really lovely way to sort of like connect parents and babies again. I mean, you know, do you think that might work for grandparents as well, or I guess even siblings if they wanted to record themselves, and then maybe play it to the baby as part of a, you know, integrating play
It
into
definitely is a
bedtime?
tool. I
Yeah,
think that is something that should be utilized.
yeah.
Sometimes I think it's often not utilized enough, and that's nobody's fault. I think sometimes, especially with parents, you get so caught up in the baby's diagnosis and, you know, like the care of the baby. Sometimes everything else gets a little bit forgotten about.
Mm,
But it is important for parents to know that their parents, so grandparents and wider members of the family, are still there to support them. And whilst they're not able to visit at the moment, it is still a great way of integrating them into that baby's life. I think doing this, it contributes to parents' confidence, but also grandparents, siblings, aunties, uncles. I think it contributes to everyone's confidence in how they kind of bond and handle the baby.
mm,
Um, I think especially for everyone who is experiencing or going through the experience of having their own baby or a grandparent or niece and nephew on the unit, it can feel like everybody's lost an element of control.
mm, mm.
And I always say to parents, I know sometimes these things are hard to talk about, but I always say to them, sometimes it is okay to admit that this is not where you thought you'd be. Because I think sometimes when you have that discussion and you start to talk about it openly, there does come a point of, well, actually, this is not where I thought I would end up. And yes, the situation might not be great, but there, it also gives them a bit of acceptance inside.
Yeah,
And in
yeah,
some cases, I think doing, you know, the recordings or the reading, I think it helps parents and other family members to regain a sense of control and assures them that actually, you know, they're in neonatal care now, but when they come home, we all can look after and support this baby. And it's just about, you know, taking the baby's lead.
amazing. Thank you. I think that's just such an important message of finding where you can get a little bit of control back in this experience. And thank you so much for sharing that. Um, so I think we're really coming to the end of our chat now. I just wanted to say, Deanne, thank you so much for joining me and talking about this. I know that loads of families will find this really interesting and take a lot from it. Um, and yeah, again, just to anyone who's watching, just to remind you that, you know, if you are going to integrate any kind of play into your baby's care plan, please talk to staff that are looking after your baby about the appropriate ways that you might want to do this or begin doing this, just to make sure that, you know, as every baby's different and develops differently, it's just important to understand that they're ready for certain types of play that we've discussed. And again, just to remind you that Bliss are here for you. You are not alone. You can contact the support team by emailing hello@bliss.org.uk, and you know, we can begin there and explore any sort of support or information that you need. Thank you again, Deanne, and have a lovely day, and hope we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much for having me, Martha. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.